everybody a minute or two to sign on here.
Supervisor, just to let you know, we are recording and we just went live. So.
All right, thank you, Jose.
Mhm.
Give everybody another minute or so. And as we're waiting, I'll just remind everybody, it might be a new person attending tonight. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, go ahead and click on the participants button, and then there is a little hand icon that you click on, and that raises your hand virtually. Or if I can see you, like I can see Tammy, you can raise your hand that way too. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Reston Comprehensive Plan Task Force meeting of November 1st, 2021. The agenda was slightly modified upon request of a couple of task force members, and Jose sent a new version out this afternoon. So we have really three main things tonight. First of all, taking a look again at the planning principles, see if we can get to initial task force approval. Then continuing a discussion of the land use chapter, and as Lynn just requested, she'll be working through basically the PDF version on her screen. And then as we have time and get close to the 9 p.m. hour, we have transportation for some additional discussion there. So any questions on the agenda tonight? All right, then let's dive right in. As I think everyone is aware, we're, I would say, in the final stretch here of the task force activities. So we are doing weekly meetings going forward. Next, when Jose, any changes? We have a meeting next week where actually I may be participating on the road. That actually might be a meeting that you run, but I definitely will be at least listening in. Jose, do we have any other changes in the foreseeable future in terms of the weekly meetings?
Not just the 16th. So on the
Right.
third Monday is when Reston Planning and Zoning meets. So it was a request to meet that Tuesday instead. And then, we have tentative going back to our Mondays, so the 22nd and the 29th so far.
Okay. All right, very good. Thanks, everybody. I know this is not the only meeting that many of you are having as well on this topic or these topics. So I appreciate everybody's extra work on this.
That's also my 30th wedding anniversary, but I'll be here.
Oh, Lynn.
Oh no! Oh, congratulations!
Wait, which date is that, Lynn? Which?
The 16th. But that's okay. I'll be here.
We're wrap up that soon. Oh. Well, any other questions or comments on our meeting schedule? All right, let's dive right in. Item number 3 on the agenda, discussion and initial task force approval, planning principles. Tammy, I think this is yours, right?
Thank you. Yes, it is. Jose, could you put up the clean version that I sent out Sunday? Do you have that?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, let me dig it out. I believe
Thank
I
you
have
so
it.
much. And while he's doing that, I want to thank everyone who weighed in. We had a number of comments, which I am so grateful for. Michelle, Mike Jennings, Bill Penniman, David Vanell, and and Chris Daniels with the wonderful comment about the heritage resources. Appreciate all of those. Takes a village. Okay, what I propose to do is go through these one by one, calling out changes as they were seen. So starting with number 1, there were no suggested edits for that. Please go to number 2. In the second sentence, let's see. I'm sorry. The last sentence also is crossed off at the request of David Vanell. I have no problem with that. Does anyone else? Simple edit. Okay, number 3. That had one change requested, which I thought was super duper. That is in the parentheses in the middle of that paragraph, adverse impacts on the environment, parentheses. Bill Penniman suggested climate, land, water, and air. I thought that was a great addition. Any problem with that one? Okay, and Jose, I've got these on my sheet, and
Okay.
when we finish, I will, at the end of the night or tomorrow, send you the corrected version. Okay, number 4.
Before you move off of 3, Mark Malcolm, I have a basic question. When you look at this, how do you measure for any kind of thing? What is the metric that you look for adverse impact on climate for what gets done in a very localized area? I agree that it is climate applies when you look at large scale things, but is the Reston area large enough to really impact climate? I understand each person contributes and the area contributes, but how do you measure this? This will come up again. What is measurable in making the localized decision? That's the reason I ask. Tell me how you would be able to look at what's an adverse impact on one county board of supervisors decision versus another.
Good point, Mark. I would say this would entail the loss of tree canopy, which absolutely affects microclimates, and the impermeable surface and hot zones. And we don't get into all this, that the hot pavement that is in the environmental chapter. Bill Penniman, you suggested this. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first place, the county is already calling for this in its CCAP plan, and it includes things like promoting energy efficiency, reducing emissions of methane, CO2, and other chemicals that contribute to global warming. It includes smart growth. A variety of things contribute to it. And the fact that we are not just individuals, we've got somewhere between 60 and 100,000 people here, it's the real thing. So it makes sense. It captures a number of things, as Tammy indicated.
Okay, is that satisfactory, Mark? You're on mute.
That satisfies because there's a reference to the existing county CCAP is most important to understand the injection here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and please note for everybody, these are principles. They are more definitely elaborated on in the chapters that accrue to these principles. So it's not just here, but these are the basic things that we agreed on. Wow, how many months ago? In 2020. So the only one that's new is number 12. Okay, number 4. We had a couple of changes here. And David is asking me, first of all, let's get the easy ones. Well, maybe not. David Vanell, do you want to comment on this?
Well, sure, Tammy. I wrote the comment that I did about basically the last part of your sentence, your paragraph sentence. Would become operational with each phase of development, and I would urge all developers to do that exactly as you stated. But the reality is that, like I say in the note, if it's something having to do with their property and their property alone, most developers are, as you have experienced on P and Z, most developers are willing to do the work, put the lane in, put the different water management system in, or some modification of it. When it starts to become a change in traffic, or a change in something that affects the whole plot, the whole, I mean, more than just their little island of development, then they hesitate. And I don't really appreciate the fact that developers want to throw money into a pot, as opposed to doing the work. But sometimes that's the best we can do. And I don't frankly know how to say that in your text here. I mean, it's your text, so I don't know how the rest of the folks feel about that. But and then the school system is a whole other animal, and their process, as you've seen, if schools come to before the P and Z to clear a development or explain a development, it's always a longer process than you would expect. So to have a
Let me-
school operational at the completion of a project, that's pretty hard to do.
Yeah, and it rarely would be a whole school, but the school system does make accommodation for their enrollment. Sometimes we don't
True.
like the accommodation, but no kid is sitting out on a chair in the snowbank.
Right.
One of the things that I want to call to your attention, this verbiage, I believe, came from the Tyson's plan, will become operational, which with each phase of development. And when we started this process, we were urged to look at Reston, think about it. What do we have and what do we lack? And what do we need and what do we want? And this is what we do want. Now, David, you're saying, well, it's not reasonable. We've been
No,
saying
I'm
it's
not saying it's not reasonable. I'm saying it's not realistic.
well, you're okay, it's not realistic. But I think we need to exert some pressure and get it to be more realistic. We have millions of dollars of infrastructure, bridges and so on, that we're going to be waiting for decades, unless somebody knows something I don't know. So this came from the Tyson's language, and that's why it's in here. Bill Penniman?
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think-
I
yeah,
guess my
Bill.
suggestion went to the same point. That was just to add to the extent feasible at the end. If it's infeasible, it isn't going to happen. But we don't, and P and Z and nobody here controls the school board, VDOT, or other
Right.
things. They'll do it when they think the time is right. And state money doesn't come. So just adding that phrase, I think, addresses David's concern, and it still achieves what you're trying to achieve, and that I agree with. I mean, That's the goal.
Tammy?
And I would offer that as long as Tammy can make this paragraph maybe not insistent is the right word, but make it as emphatic as possible that this is what we want, and then Bill's comment about to the extent feasible, I'm fine with that.
Isn't that a get out of jail free card?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to add. That is a get out of jail free card, and we will never, ever get what the community needs in order to support the development. And if this came from the Tyson's plan, I think that it should carry on its own as is. Thank you.
I don't think it's
Agree.
get out of jail free card because it just simply recognizes the reality of government and non-governmental processes that are not within anybody's control, and their sense of timing is different. And legally, in some cases, for legal reasons, it's different. We just have to work with it to the extent we can, which is why to the extent feasible, I thought was a fair resolution. Thank you.
I'm
Can I ask a question? Who's the directed or who's the intended implementer of this? I mean, I think if we stuck in language that said the phasing and funding of the infrastructure of the expansion and modification of adequate blah, blah, blah by the government will become operational with each phase of development is a lot different than by the developer. And, there's a host of improvements from soapstone to connector to even intersection improvements that can only be done by the government. It's impossible to do by the private sector. And if we're setting expectations that the private sector is going to solve all the problems, we're misassigning that responsibility.
okay. Well, in that
I think
regard,
public
Mark, if you-
facilities.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Tam.
No,
Wait,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think public facilities to support what Mark has observed. That is county run. Public facilities are county run.
Schools are county run, parks are county run. However, I will say that park space could be given by a developer and
Sure.
has heretofore not been. So that's one area that's on the line in my mind. We have that infamous thing over in Tyson, in Reston, Wheelie East, where we have a development of smashed in townhouses with a pocket park that is literally the size of a dumpster with a canopy over it or a pergola. And that is the sole, that's their sole contribution to open space for all of those people they smashed in there. I don't even think a trash truck can get in there and turn around. I think the trash truck either has to back in or back out. And this is an example of something that got through our planning. And it's really a shame because it isn't what Reston should be. And it isn't, there were the landscape and everything else was compromised. So anyway, that, I just want to make that comment as far as, this doesn't specifically say, but public facilities, schools, and parks for the most part are governmental. Do we have to say governmental in there? I don't think so.
Did this language work for Tyson? Is this the language they used?
Will become operational at
Is
each
the
phase. I
language
believe is
used?
Tyson's language taken.
So if it
That was
if
the
it
same
worked for
question I
Tyson,
was going to ask
why
for
couldn't it
Michelle.
work
If
here?
that's what they use, did Tyson suffer from this? Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah,
No,
I don't have
I
the
think it's
page
even
out
more
of the
simple than
Tyson's
that.
plan.
If it was okay to put in Tyson's plan, I do not see why it would be a problem here in ours. This is getting at the heart of what I think a number of people in the community are concerned about, that these facilities are not going to be operational when the demand is increased from added development. So I think that this is incredibly important to the larger community, and I just do not see how, if it worked for Tyson's, why it could not also be appropriate for Reston.
Could I give one example of a common situation we've seen? We've seen on P&C, Tammy will know about these, where a builder comes in and he gives half a road, and it might be the right half, because the next developer over is going to contribute the other half, but he isn't going to contribute the second half until he does his development. At that point, you have a complete road. It isn't operational till the second half comes in, but it's just neither can move forward. If you say nobody can move forward until it's fully operational, it doesn't work. But also, it doesn't, it's half the development. So I don't know. That's why I thought, to the extent
It says
feasible,
will become
Amy,
operational with each
Amy,
phase of
Amy.
development. So that's,
Okay.
that is an important distinction.
Can
Hey,
I-
Tammy.
It all has to be ready.
Tammy, it's Jose. I just want to let you know, and I think you see the hands. I know Gary wanted to make a point.
Thank
Michelle
you,
put her
Gary.
hand down, and then Dennis has a hand. I think Chris Daniel already spoke, but he has a hand as well.
Thank you, Jose. Okay,
So,
Gary,
well, I guess, I think we went over this. This was approved by us a year or more ago, and we had the same conversation and ended up with this language. And it was discussed, I think, in the same, I mean, my memory's not that great, but I think it was the same kind of thing. And we're kind of going over and over the same point. It ought to stay as the way it is to me. It's getting the overall point that Michelle just made. And I think Preston kind of wants to make that point.
okay, Dennis.
Yeah, quickly, look, these are principles. It should be a vision of what we want, what we think we need here. I mean, is there anybody on this call who doesn't think infrastructure should be phased in with development? And as far as putting it forward, the 10 Commandments, the Bill of Rights don't come with a where feasible clause and everything. I mean, we want to send a message out there that this is the vision that we have for Reston. And I think if the Tyson's plan already has it, it's been tried and true, and we should leave it as is.
Yeah, Tammy, it's Walter. If I could, the
Please.
language in Tyson's is similar. The one phrase that's repeated in the Tyson's plan in a lot of places is it talks about how the analyses should be performed in conjunction with any development application, and talks about the phasing of improvements with new development and appropriate measures to mitigate other impacts. It's very similar. It's not exactly like this, but I welcome the input and certainly support doing this, wherever possible.
I mean, Walter, to that point, I mean, Tyson's has 8 pages of guidance on implementation. And I think that's what you're hearing some trepidation over, is that there's nothing in this that talks about how do you actually achieve this. And so I think left open, any perspective can drive a Mack truck through that hole of, sort of who's responsible and how does it happen and what are the mechanisms that you have to put in place. And if it were flipped around and said something along the lines of, implementation strategies will be developed to facilitate the provision of infrastructure concurrent with the development, I think that's fine. But I
That's
think
not
this,
a principle. We're talking about principles here. We're going to have an implementation section too. I think that's already, if it's not in the land use, I think it's in the land use. There was discussion of that at one point. These are just principles, vision, and goal, as Dennis said.
then that's fine. I mean, we can say that, but just I would cross-reference the implementation piece of it then. I mean, I don't disagree with the notion that this ought to be the aspirational goal. I think the challenge I have is trying to figure out who's responsible and in what form or fashion for achieving that.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Tammy, I see two
David?
hands.
David Gill?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
put your hands down, please, if you've talked. David.
Sure. And building a little bit on what Mark said, in Tyson's too, there was actual direction to develop an implementation authority. And that's largely what the Tyson's partnership grew out of. And that has been charged with keeper of the larger picture, for lack of a better term. And there's a lot of language on how phasing of infrastructure and implementation of these larger goals will occur. Something like, frankly, the community circuit, which has finally begun to be addressed with the borough, was a product of that implementation partnership. And so I think I echo a lot of what Mark is saying in terms of when we think about how we phase infrastructure, that you can't solve it with just one individual application just because of the very role of the things we're trying to address. But I think the end goal for everyone is still the same.
Yes, I agree. And we do not have the massive money that Tyson's has. So we are not the Tyson's plan. They are their own plan. But we have been left floundering without proper infrastructure, connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. And as we get going with more approved plans being built, we need our infrastructure to be there. We can't be clawing at the edges and have gridlock and overcrowded schools and no parks. And make no mistake, this is going to put a little bit of pressure, more pressure on developers. But if you want to come to Reston, these are our principles, and this is what we want. This is the people's plan from the community to try to make Reston a model for the rest of the county. And we're not saying we need red carpets and that kind of thing, but we do need to have phased operational facilities when development comes in. So we're not saying everything, but we are saying with each phase, we expect to have the parks, etc. So, okay.
Tammy,
Charles
we have
Kapoor?
4 more hands: Chris Daniel, Charles Kapoor, Lynn, and Michelle.
Okay.
Chris Daniel.
So I do want to echo with Michelle that if we have something that is similar to or concurrent with the Tyson's plan, I like seeing that similarity there. But I think if we're going to suggest that this is not recognizing reality, then we need suggestions on how it can be more practical to reality, but also recognize that there is an expectation in Reston that development and the county, there's a partnership there with the community, and that this principle is meant to carry that, and it should be echoed throughout the rest of the details of the plan. So if we feel like it's giving a false impression or an unrealistic impression, we can try to nuance that, but I don't think stripping out this, I agree with Tammy, this is a key problem, and this is maybe more of a directive at the county than it is at the developers, in the sense that you're approving things, but there's not this infrastructure to support them. So it hurts the developer and the citizen. And so how do we make this more conducive to both those parties so that developers are apt to cooperate, but the county is also apt to support said development so that it's not stuck in a situation building something that isn't actually supportable?
Thanks, Chris. Let's see, who do we have? Lynn?
Thank you, Tammy. So, so I have 2 points. I keep hearing this reference to Tyson's. And while I think it's wonderful that we want to aspire or look at the language that has been accepted by Tyson's, I have to say, we're Reston, we're not Tyson's. So this is our language. And this pertains to the Reston plan. And this particular principle is a carryover from as far as I can remember. This development will be phased with infrastructure, has been there as long as I can remember. And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity and a challenge for developers, builders, anyone that wants to come in to capitalize and make Reston better. This is an opportunity for them to partner with the county, and let's work together and let's enable the county to put these things into operation in phase with the development. So thank you.
All righty, Jan Bradshaw.
Oh, well, I totally agree with Lynn and you that we need to have the infrastructure set before we try to add more buildings and more development. And I personally think that this is fine. That's my feeling. I don't think we need to change it. We are not Tyson's. We are our own entity because of the idea of the village centers, because of the idea of nature and tree canopy. That is open space. This is vital to Reston. And I think that we should keep that in mind when we're looking at things like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, who do we have left that hasn't? Mike Jennings?
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. I just I put in the chat a link to the Tyson's plan. This language is nowhere in the planning principles of Tyson, so that whether we want it or not, Lynn has a point, but it's not in there. Secondly, the development planning principle is in the existing plan, but the word it said should occur with development was changed to will. I'm not at this point giving a critique of which is right, but just to correct that yes, it's been around for a long time, but it's been changed for this edition. That's it.
Okay, Michelle? I think that's the end of our hands, right? Michelle, do you have anything?
No, I have nothing to add except just I really do think that this gets at the heart of what people are concerned about with the development that is coming into Reston. And that is part of our mission too, is to consider that the community has concerns and to make sure that this document addresses those concerns. And I think that this sentence should remain as is.
Yes, and to the will should thing, Mike, we had the discussion that only must and will carry the weight of a declarative, we're going to do this. So that was why that was changed.
Tammy, we did have Charles
Sorry.
Kapoor.
Oh,
That's what I was going to say is Charles Kapoor has his hand up as well.
Is he? I thought I called on him.
No, we got Chris, but yeah, Charles, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with the point that Chris raised earlier, in that if there are elements that we feel like we need to have kind of equal voicing in, that we'll work on getting the voices of both. For me, I sit in a position where I'm hearing a lot of here's the mandate, here are the rules of engagement. If this section of the community wants to play, I think recognizing that there is an opportunity for everyone to be able to be satisfied and have their voice heard in this process. I see this document as being more than just planning principles. I don't know, I think it's a little diminishing to say that it's just planning principles. A lot of these other chapters, like the land use chapter and some other, are going to be based on what's here. So I do think it's worth taking the time to parse this and making sure that we're getting everyone's voices and input into this, because it will impact other parts of this plan that we're going to be voting on at some point here
Well,
in the near
without
future.
question, the planning principles are penultimately important. This is one thing when the original task force back in, I don't even know what year, but the approval was 14, 15, started, we were not allowed to have planning principles until a couple of years into it. Can you imagine trying to plan for a TSA area that nobody had before and not having any planning principles? And finally, John Carter stepped up and became the chair of that. And we had a planning principle committee. And I will tell you, frankly, there were no developers on that committee. They didn't think it was important, but there were foresters on that committee and a number of other community people. The art people were on that, and we developed the planning principles that were in the first iteration. This is a different animal. This is a different phase. We have had development. We now see what we got. We see the good things. We see the bad things, and we see what's lacking. And that is the iteration of this. These 12 things are the basis under which we hope that Reston will develop in the future. So without question, they're hugely important.
Tammy?
Yes.
Tammy, would my suggestion be more palatable to you if it were changed to the maximum extent feasible? I mean, I'm just tossing out an idea.
No,
Okay.
that is a get out of jail free card as far as I'm concerned. So, okay, well, let's go on and discuss these others. We probably have to come back to number 4. Is anybody else?
I was just going to ask if we're going to come back to 4. That's all.
We will come back to 4. Let's get through the others. 5 is, there were a couple of changes, some minor, and there was none under the first bullet. Under the second, David Vanell had a question. Mike, let's see, that was let me get to that. It's Village Center. Okay. Mike Jennings, I think I put this in already in this, should include a plaza as a central element. Excellent. And also he put in under residential neighborhoods, housing types and sizes. Very good. I had no problem with that. Does anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Then David had a question. Well, let's go. The last sentence in this is residential neighborhoods. Let's get the easy ones first. Bill Penman wanted appropriate transitions will be provided between new development. It now reads, and all residential neighborhoods. Bill Penman would like to change that and traditional residential neighborhoods.
If I could explain, let me explain the reason for that. And that is, in the TSAs, you're going to have new residential neighborhoods go up. But they're expecting other buildings like somebody puts up a residential building, he can't complain that his neighbor is also going to put up a residential building. Otherwise, the whole idea of 75-25 goes down the tube. And that's why we want
let
to
me
protect
stop
the
you right there.
traditional neighborhoods.
Metro,
and that's my reason.
The first bullet is metro station areas. This is talking about residential areas, neighborhoods, completely different subject.
Yes.
Well, that's why that's why I threw the word traditional in, because that's everything that most of us live in and are used to. And that was my only attempt.
Yeah, I don't see why we're talking about residential neighborhoods. I don't want to exclude anything. I think it should be all residential neighborhoods.
I agree.
We're not
I
talking
think
about
I
the
think we're
TSAs.
choking on gnats while trying to eat an elephant.
Okay.
Malcolm, I agree with Tammy. The thing is, in simplicity of language, neither the word all, not or, nor traditional are necessary here. It's just simply new development in conjunction with the residential neighborhoods. You don't need any descriptor.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Okay with me. So
Where were you
traditional.
all my life? Okay, let's go back up to village centers. And David Bennell, you had a comment here.
Yeah, I did. I think what my comment was, or actually my wording change was, I wanted to make sure that what we were talking about was links among the village centers, right? I don't remember what your actual wording was, but making sure that people can get from one village center to another, and also to make sure that we can get from village center to the transit, from each village center to the transit stations. I'm just trying to make it
Yeah,
clear
and
that it should be a cohesive,
Right, and
coordinated thing.
we cover that in number 9, connectivity and mobility.
We already have that. We're
Yeah,
already doing that. We have the ribs going around to the mall. They connect them all.
David, that is covered in number 9 in connectivity and mobility. So let's,
What was your original wording then in that last sentence of that village center section?
convenient public transportation options should further enhance the links among the village centers and among the village centers and the transit stations. And what, and you wanted, your comment was, I think I put it in there.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're good with that one. Okay, so that takes us to number 6.
Tammy, I apologize. This is David Gill. Just real quick on village centers. A lot of the discussion we just had above made me think that maybe we want to include some acknowledgement here that the village centers are unique to Reston. And I do think they're one of the organizing principles of Reston that are unique in Fairfax County. So I didn't know if this would be an appropriate place to try and include some language to that effect.
I think we're going to have an introduction, and that probably the village center, iconic village centers will probably be described there. Unfortunately, that hasn't been formalized and presented yet, but let me make a note of that.
Because I think it's important in our principles, then we could trickle down to how we treat them throughout the chapters based on the idea of their.
So what would be your,
I mean,
we say they are important community gathering places and include a mix of locally serving retail.
I literally mean right after the R, maybe it's the village centers are a unique aspect of the original planning of Reston and an important community gathering space. I'm just thinking some acknowledgement that of their primacy in the original vision of Reston.
Okay, anybody else agree with that, or?
I don't agree with it.
You what?
I don't agree with that.
Anybody else have a comment, please?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, we talk often about how Reston is special, and I think the village centers are certainly a piece of that. So if we're so special, we ought to say so.
This is Chris Daniel. I agree, particularly one being a National Register listed site for its uniqueness. I think we can't not emphasize that enough.
Okay, so give me some wording here for village centers, please.
If after gathering places you put comma unique to Reston, comma, or or David's suggestion was fine too.
Okay, David, what was your verbiage?
I was just being extemporaneous here. So it was something along the lines of village centers are a unique aspect of Reston and just go on.
Okay, well then we've got it.
Right.
Thank you.
Well,
Alrighty.
but I think it's in an
You
introduction.
might want to say period. Oh, sorry, Garrett. I didn't mean to talk over you.
What do you say that serve as and important community as important community gathering places.
That's good.
And after Reston,
Yes.
I would say period. They serve as an important
Okay.
community gathering place and include a mix.
thank you. Perfect. All righty. Let's see, we're on number 6, please. Yes, we have livable. Metro Rail corridor will be transformed. The whole thing is livable. So Michelle suggested taking livable out of Reston Town Center because they all are livable. One would be livable and the rest unlivable. So that's great. And then we have a question from David Vanell regarding tapering. How much are we anticipating tapering? Well, tapering was a major feature of the first task force, and we're carrying on with that idea that the town center station, the stuff around it is the highest point, and it tapers down north-south and east-west. So Wheelie would not be taller or more dense than town center, ditto Herndon Monroe. And then as we go north and south, we also are tapering down in heights and density. One thing that threw a wrench in everybody's plan was the orphan lot that is encased by Spectrum. It's the lot, the parcel right in back of the Container Store. That was a weirdo situation where there was absolutely no zoning, no prohibitive zoning on that lot. And a plan was approved and still exists for a 23-story building there. That was not well received, but there was nothing that could be done about it because the lot came with no restriction. So there is an approved plan there. I don't think that particular plan will be built, but we'll see what comes in. Other than that, things are supposed to taper down in density and in height. So that's where that taper came from. I can't answer how much I'm anticipating because we don't know. A lot has been built since this time.
Hey, Tammy.
So, yes.
It's Jose. I know that we have a stacked agenda, but did you want to go another 15 more minutes on planning principles or?
Yeah, well, there's there are a couple that don't have changes, so I think we can get through this.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Tammy. And I think Mark Malcolm has a
get
hand.
this to a vote tonight so we can cross some of these off the list.
Yeah. Thank you, Tammy.
Okay. 7. There was a suggestion by David Vanell to put wide spectrum in as far as the Vibrant Employment Center. Reston has provided a place for a wide spectrum. I thought that was a fine, no sweat on that. And there was some controversy about the last minority, the last sentence, minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses will be required. So people wanted to water that down, receive special consideration. Any comments on that?
Yeah, this is Bill. I mean, I suggested replacing required with encouraged, and I'll just give an example. And you'll recall from a P&Z session that General Dynamics wanted to build a new headquarters along Sunset Hills Road. Well, we couldn't say no to it because no, that building is required to be minority or sort of owned. I mean, obviously, some publicly owned building developers don't fit this category. It should be strongly encouraged, and I totally support the goal, but it's just not a practical requirement. That's all.
Okay, but it doesn't say all businesses will be required
Well,
to be minority.
when you have a word like required, it pretty much implies it's required for everything. It's required.
Michelle, you put this in any, you want to say anything about that?
I think someone else changed my language. I also had strongly encouraged. If there is a way to make it more forceful, I would be 100% supportive of that. But I don't know that required is the correct word, but at this point, I'm fine with strongly encouraged if there's not something stronger.
All right, let's go
I'm
with
fine with
that.
that too.
Will be strongly encouraged.
And I had mentioned fostered as the word for that. Be fostered instead of required.
What about fostered and strongly encouraged? Let's do both.
All righty. Thank you.
Can I just ask a practical question for a second, which is how do we expect the county in implementing this plan to enforce that or to evaluate it as a criteria? If this is going into the earned density section, which I understand it will, how do we expect the county on a speculative basis to consider this as an implementation tool for whether to approve a zoning application?
We don't know that this is going into the earned density section. It's still being baked. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, it says.
I'll just,
Maybe it worked.
I guess say I think the principles should be in something like earned density, but these words don't look strong to me, having worked in the federal government for a ton of years. And, you know, these are supported in laws we've had for many, many, many years, and they don't look strong at all to me. And I'm not looking at one Fairfax but I think it has words like this. Michelle may be able to chime in because I don't have that up on my screen.
Right. I guess what, Gary, I don't dispute that at all. I guess what I'm asking is when we're making land use decisions about, you know, what to approve or not approve, if I'm a developer and I'm proposing a 400,000 square foot office building, how do I prove that I'm meeting this principle?
Jose,
how does the county evaluate that? And maybe that's a question for staff, but that's.
Sorry, Mark, let's get the whole thing on, the whole of number 7 on the screen at the same time. Thank you. 7, so we can read it. So it's providing a place for a wide spectrum of companies of various sizes, local to international. Future modifications should continue, not will continue, should continue to promote a broad range of opportunities for a robust and diverse business, advanced technology, education, and research community. Minority-owned, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses will be fostered and strongly encouraged. What about that? Can't be needed, needs a metric. That is so loose and so general. There's nothing that's going to stop a business. This number 7 is not going to stop a business. It just says we'll become a more vibrant employment center.
It's a principle.
Right. I get all of that. I guess what I'm just sort of trying to figure out is it's a very specific, all of these things are the things against which projects are going to be measured. And so I'm just trying to figure out, like, how do we you know, in my mind, I guess there needs to be an extra step, right? Which is we're going to strongly encourage these things in the context of leasing, or we'll give preferential land use treatment to projects that include this element, or some other type of additional element that goes with. I think about what Chris talked about with the heritage resources, right? Where there was the possibility of extra density if you included repurposing of significant buildings as part of your project. If these things are really in there, that's, you know, sort of how they get baked in, right? This is, I'm not going to die on my sword over this. I'm just saying that in the context of implementing this, I just want to make sure that it's not something that is going to be hard to define when you go through the process later.
Well, it's, you know,
Tammy,
Tammy?
can I say,
it's 2021.
yeah,
You
we're
know,
not
you
giving
got societal
publicity
things coming up.
for
In
allowing them
addition to, if you're worried about this, I worry about the business you're trying to bring in here. This is so loose. I can't see where this would be in any way limiting to a soul.
Tammy,
We've
this is
gotten
Chris.
rid of required.
I was going to say, I think this leaves a wide path open for a developer or any company, anyone coming into Reston to say, sell
Right.
yourself. It's because we look at the principle as the lead line, vibrant employment center. Then we give a list of various ways. And I can't think of many a company in my years of federal service that has not in their, submissions for contracts said, such and such company is this, that, this, and this, and does these things. And as everyone's got their bylines. And, I think, yes, it would be fantastic if you could always have a company that met all of these, but that not every business is going to have. We can't guarantee a woman-owned business every time. You can't guarantee a veteran-owned business every time. But we're wanting people to sell themselves. And this is trying to say, present that. And hopefully when county staff is able to evaluate that, they can say, yes, we're getting great applications, great submissions for this. I also say though, this is going to go through some staff looking, just like I will say Heritage just went through. So if there are any red flags, won't that still get caught? So I feel like let's try to give the best we can. And then if we have to be told we're going a little too far, I'd rather hear that from staff as well.
Thank you. Number 8, no changes. Number 9.
Sorry, Tammy, this is David Gill. Just getting back to 7. I think what Mark's getting at, with this language, are you encouraging women, minority, veteran-owned developers to come into the process, and that's part of the benefit of coming into Reston, or is it really about the end user?
Read it. It's not vague, and it's not restrictive. We'll become a more vibrant employment center. We'll provide a place for a wide spectrum of companies. If women-owned or minority or veteran-owned developer shows up, yippee. We're not limiting anybody.
And their representatives too. We'd love to see more women. We'd love
Sure.
to see
Yeah.
more minority representatives at the.
This is so weak compared to the federal acquisition regulation.
Yeah.
It is
I
unbelievable.
don't want to cut off conversation, but we're getting on to an hour here and we want to speed along. We got 2 more topics tonight. It's not that this isn't important, but this one is so open. I can't understand that we're having an issue on this. Number 9, connectivity and mobility. Let's see. There was a suggestion. Yeah, this has it. Reston's transportation plan will develop a range, which was a good change. And the only issue was the last sentence, priority should be to facilitate local trips within Reston instead of through traffic. There was a suggestion from David Vanell about being specific. I don't want to be specific. We don't know what traffic patterns are going to change or when they're going to change. And that belongs in the transportation chapter. Anybody have an argument about that? Okay, number 10. A change of a the to an a is the only change there, which is a good change. And then we get to 11. And there was David Vanel had a question here about did we want to have a list of green buildings, building technologies? That is in the environmental chapter. And then number 12 had no changes. So I guess we're back to number 4, and if we can hammer
Tammy,
that out. Yes?
Tammy, in 11, I had 2 suggestions. One's just a wording one to be consistent with all the other bullets. The phrase,
Sorry.
the next to last bullet on the page has the phrase "as part of land use process will be required." That's just inconsistent with all the other bullets. And if we eliminate that one phrase.
Okay, yes, I'm so
that's
sorry,
all.
Bill,
And
I
then
missed that. Okay.
that's okay. And then the
That is-
last one, I suggested inserting "and the public," safe occupants and the public, customers, neighbors,
Yes,
all may be affected.
excellent.
That's all. I don't think either of those should be controversial.
Yeah.
Be surprised.
Do you follow that Jose just X out as part of the land use process will be required too. So it'll read increasing opportunities for affordable child care and senior care facilities to serve. Yeah, perfect. That's great. And then in the last bullet, thank you so much, Bill. I missed this. Yes, occupants and the public in that last bullet. So yeah, and get perfect. Thank you. All right, let's go back to 4 and see if we can figure out what to do with that so we can have a vote on this. What do we need to do, folks? Was it number 4? Yes, infrastructure. Public facilities.
I move we accept as is.
Mark Malcolm is second.
All right, everybody put their hand down, please. Chris, you have your hand up. Okay, let's take a vote on this. All in favor of accepting it as is?
Tammy, are you going to do discussion at all, or we're just
Well,
going
we
to?
had a discussion.
We had it.
I guess maybe that begs the question: did everybody get their say in?
Called on everybody who
Well,
had their hand
I
up.
guess if we're following Robert's rules, we do need to have discussion.
All right. It is 8:02. Go. No discussion? Call a question. All those in favor, put your hand up.
Aye.
All right, everyone, keep your hands up if you want them up and hold them while I count. Tammy, I see 10 hands. I may be wrong. Yeah, I see 10.
Okay, and let's see. I think that's the majority. The people who are here, isn't it? Yes. Okay, so 4 stands as written, and now
Shouldn't we have a negative vote as well?
I suppose can do that. All hands down, please. All hands down. Charles Colby, your hand is still up.
All right, all hands are
All
down,
right.
Tammy.
All those who oppose this, put your hands up, please.
All right, keep them up. I'm gonna start counting in 3, 2, 1. I see 7 hands.
And in fairness, I think we ought to have abstentions as well.
Good point.
I see 8.
You see 8?
So we had
Counting wrong.
10 to 8. So that passes.
Oh, there was an extra one. Sorry, Tammy.
No, that's all right.
All
Okay,
hands
now
down.
let's vote on the whole schmagegi. We accept this. All hands down.
I think you
please.
need abstentions as well.
We do. I
think
think
we do.
Proper.
You have staff who probably aren't going to vote yay or nay, so I
Staff
think
can't
it's only
vote.
fair.
These are people who are members of the task force.
Yeah, I don't know why we need
As
abstentions.
previously
We haven't
announced,
done this before.
as previously announced, I'm abstaining and will vote only as a member of the board, RA board, so
Thank you, John.
I'm an abstention.
Okay, is there anybody else who's an abstention? 10, 8, and 1. Number 4 stands. Okay, voting for the whole acceptance of these planning principles as written. All those in favor are all hands down.
One
All
minor
those-
thing for what you had with 8, when you did the foster and strongly encourage, foster means to encourage. You're doing a Department of Redundancy department phrasing. Foster means encourage or promote the development of something usually considered to be good. You're using 2 words that have the same meaning. I suggest a slight reword. Use foster or use encourage, but don't use both.
Okay, anybody care whether it's foster or encourage? Let's go with strongly encouraged. Well, let's say, I don't know, no. Who wants to make a motion on that or decide?
I think strongly encouraged is fine.
I think so too.
Thank you. All right, with that probable or that change, all those in favor of accepting the planning principles, please raise your hands.
All right, keep your hands up. I'm going to start counting in 3, 2, 1. Oh, some hands went down. Oh, wait. I see 14.
Yes, I have that too. Hands down, please. All those opposed to accepting the 12 planning principles as written.
Wait, Tammy, I think Jennifer put her hand down. No, no worries.
Yeah. All those opposed.
All right, everyone, I'll be counting in 3, 2, 1. See 4 hands. Tammy,
Pardon me?
I see 4 hands.
Yes, 4 hands. Okay. All those opposed, hands down, please. Yeah, we got the opposed. All those who are abstaining, please raise your hand.
I see 1.
2.
Oh, 2.
Moira, are you abstaining? Moira, are you abstaining?
Yes, I am.
Okay, 2 abstain.
Okay.
All right, We have our planning principles. Thank you so much to everybody who worked so hard on this. Appreciate it.
Yay.
Tammy, thank you very much. And just as a reminder of the process overall, this will be going to a more, I guess, in writing analysis by staff. So there may be at some point in the future, there may be, this will come back to the task force for one final review, should there be staff comments or suggestions. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Now I'm going to do something real easy and just turn it over to Lynn. Lynn, land use, take it away.
Thank you. And Tammy, thank you. Great job on the principles. That was great. Okay, so when we left off last week, I was sharing a PDF of the red line, and I believe that we got through everything except the Reston neighborhoods. And there were quite a bit of changes there. So let me just see if I can click on that. Yes, I can go straight to it. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to share, Jose. So the Reston neighborhoods section has been, I think, greatly changed from some of the early versions of this draft. So what we've done is I've mentioned Bill Mayland has pointed out a map to us that we have worked from since then. But much of the language here is from the original plan. And I want to give kudos again to Jose for helping us identify the differences between the original plan and the draft land use. But there are some, there's some changes in this language. I've encouraged you all to read what we have submitted. The window for providing edits is closing. I see that there are more edits that are continuing to come in. Many of those, I think, were on the third and fourth iterations of edits. So, yeah, this window is closing. But in terms of the Reston neighborhoods, we did remove quite a few of the neighborhoods that were identified on the map. And I don't think that that map is on this. Let's see. Oh, yes, this map. Sorry. This is the map that that we are referring to. And what we will be doing is we have removed several of the previous indicators because those projects are complete. So there's no point in continuing to take up space to talk about projects that have been completed. So you'll note that number one is now turned into the golf courses, and those are identified as number one instead of, I think they were number 8 previously. Or yes, they were previously 8. So we have removed, can you all see this, what is showing deleted here? Are you able to read this, or is my screen blocking the way?
We can read that. It's a little small.
Okay. Let me see if I can increase it here. So this is what was deleted. So the Hawthorne and Vintage Place clusters, this project is complete, as well as number 2, the land within Reston north of Hawthorne cluster and west. So that is complete. we deleted number 3 that pertained to the redevelopment of an existing church on Colts Neck Road. And there was a lot of site-specific language here that went along with that deletion. And the same with St. John's Wood. That has been deleted.
Are we commenting in real time, or do we send comments to you, Lynn? How do we want to go as you're going through this?
Well, we have been asking the task force members to send us their edits, their comments. We've been receiving those for the last month. And the working group for land use meets for 2 hours every
Okay. I just didn't know
Friday.
whether you wanted.
And
I can send them in. All I was
yeah,
asking.
we would appreciate receiving comments so that we can discuss it as the working group. And then we will bring those comments. As you can see, we bring those comments and the working group comments back to the task force. So we are not looking for comments today.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. If you would get those to us, we would appreciate it. And I'm going to say that this week is probably the closing of the window. So, you know, we can't continue to edit this document in perpetuity. We do have deadlines. We want to get this completed and to staff for their review. So thank you.
Lynn, can I make one comment?
Of course.
On
Please,
this
Tammy.
neighborhood section with this yellow map that Lynn just showed a few minutes ago, every single place there was visited in person, identified, and you know, told that, you know, talk to people or called RA if it was RA, and found out, yes, this is a complete area. There are no more lots to be developed. It is a finished project. When this map was made, obviously these were not finished. So that's, we're working on this neighborhood section now, and I will tell you, every single place has been visited and discussed.
Thank you, Tammy.
Investigated. Thank you.
So we've basically, so as you can see, we had, I think 11 site specific descriptions for each of these parcels. And we have gone from 11 down to, so of course, the existing language for the Reston National and Hidden Creek, the recreational. Now, we did have some discussion about the language being private. So it's for private recreation use and will remain as golf courses. Lake Fairfax Drive. This is the Fairfax Hunt Club, which is also it's private recreation use. So that becomes number 2 on the map. Number 3 is the area adjacent to the western edge of Lake Fairfax Park on Colvin Run. This has been developed as multi-family residential use. I think our plan is just to go ahead and leave that in there. And then the area north of Lawyers Road and south of the Glade Stream Valley that is not zoned. So that is not zoned as part of Reston, but it is planned for residential use at 0.1 to 0.2 dwelling units per acre as shown on the plan map. And then number 5 is one that we have added, and this pertains to Charter Oak Apartments that is located in Reston's PRC. And the density of 50 dwelling units per acre must only be permitted if the applicant can demonstrate a previous approval. Oh, and also, so Deepwood Town Development is also one that is added. So this is surrounded by Reston's PRC. It's off of Glacier, so it's not PRC per se, but it is within Reston. One of the changes, or I should say, two of the changes that we made was the recommendations for single family and the recommendations for multifamily were previously put forth as recommendations for single family redevelopment. We felt that redevelopment is not exactly the term that we would use for these neighborhoods. So we simply said that recommendations for single family, both attached and detached, that they will be protected. And this is, I would say it's not new text, but it is massaged text that you all should have received prior to our meeting last week. And I'm hoping that those of you who care about this will have spent the time to review the content here. I don't think that there are things in here that are, I'm just gonna come over here to see what so this is what was deleted in the right navigation pane. So I don't know that this is the time for us to be reading what was deleted since it is voluminous. But I would encourage you to, if you haven't already, please. We've been asking for comments. We've been asking for your edits. And I don't think that it's fair to continue to come back to the land use working group after we've gone through this over and over again.
I would just
So,
I would just counter it, Lynn, a little bit with,
yep.
you know, for us to keep reading version after version after version and comment, you know, I might be saying, well, I'll wait till there's more of a final version before I'm going to put effort into commenting. So that's another side of why people may be with, you know, not done anything yet.
Well, yeah. So, but when we ask for your comments, we are seriously asking for your comments, and we really, you know, the working group has put in so much time, and you know, we take the edits that come in from the task force very seriously, and we mull over what the intent is and what the implications of those comments or those edits are to the document. So, you know, whether you send the comments in when we ask for them or wait until the last possible minute is, you know, there's no difference, Mike, honestly.
I'm not saying that,
There,
but
it is going to get the same
if you
consideration.
send a version out and I comment on it, and then the next time it's totally different, then I go, you know, now I got to comment another version of it. Whereas after it's been massaged a few times, it makes more sense for me to comment on it. That's all I'm saying. I don't question at all your you know, meaningfulness in looking at the edits.
Okay, we do take them very seriously. Please know that.
Lynn,
So
this is Mark. Can I ask
yes,
two quick questions? One,
of course,
is maybe simple, one's a little bit more complicated, and I'm not sure which one will turn out to be which. One comment is, I know that Bill Penniman, for example, provided some comments that aren't specific or aren't just specific text-oriented comments, but were more thematic and perspective comments about the sort of end game of all of this. How are you guys evaluating those comments in the context of what you're drafting? And the second question is, I believe at the outset, the conversation was to leave the golf courses out of all of this conversation. And I wonder why we're making any change to that particular section if the intent was to leave them out entirely. And I don't know which one of those is more controversial, but I'll ask the question.
Okay, so let me answer your two questions. Your first question, in terms of the edits that or the thematic observations that Mr. Penniman provided, I personally have not had an opportunity to review those. I think they just came in yesterday or the day before, and as I said, yesterday. So as I said, the land use working group meets for 2 hours every Friday, and everything that comes in is evaluated by, it's discussed amongst ourselves. So I can't tell you what the outcome of those observations, but I can tell you that it will be discussed and it will be on the agenda for our next meeting. In terms of the golf courses, I think the only edits that we made was to we're trying to reduce the number of words in the land use chapter. So we removed a whole sentence actually here that referred people to another section. And let's look at this. Let's see. It's Colvin Woods. I think we deleted is planned for, and we just said will remain. So we thought that that was a minuscule.
Could I comment on that? I don't think it is minuscule, given Tammy's prescription that the word will has magic legal power. That is, it purports to decide a question that I thought Walter said was not to be addressed. So I have no objection to leaving the language exactly as it is in the existing plan, but I question the edit.
So is planned for, we'll go back in.
Yeah, I just think that's fine. It avoids the debate we were supposed to avoid. That's all.
Okay.
It's still pretty good from your standpoint.
Did that answer your question, Mark?
Well, I mean, I guess sort of, right? I mean, maybe where I'm going with this is, right, if one or more of us were inclined to pick up on the theme that Bill has expressed, I have not had the luxury of understanding that theme. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I guess my question is, if one or more of us wanted to pick up, set aside Bill's theme, but to take a slightly different theme than what you all have put together in a way that doesn't follow the outline that you have put forth here, what's the best way to get that information or that approach or that language in front of the working group or to the task force to consider, right? I mean, I go back a couple of meetings ago where, I talked about the jobs to housing ratio and you added some language in on that. But I think there are elements of this where we've made decisions from a land use perspective to try to put as much density as we can of the next 50 years of Fairfax County's growth in the toll road corridor and into these nodes. And, there's a lot of conversation about taking 50,000 people out of the land use plan with these changes. And I don't know how we square the overall objective of utilizing a $6.5 billion investment in a heavy rail line with taking 50,000 people off the land use plan. And it could be that those 50,000 people never show up, but there was method to the madness in putting that construct together. And if folks want to provide a different construct than what is being offered here, what's the best way to do that, given the setup where the land use committee decides to embrace or not embrace either the general or the specific recommendations, and the task force is left to deal with what you guys do?
Well, I think
Mark,
that
I
we
don't think
have,
that is true. I mean, Lynn has been very clear in showing everybody what suggestions have come in, what the land use group has either implemented or some slight wording changes they have made, and we come here every week and ask the task force if you're okay with the changes. So it's not like the land use group is making these decisions. The task force is making the decisions. The
No,
land use
no,
group
I
is trying
disagree.
to organize what you all are bringing and putting it into one document. If you would
Last
like to
week,
make changes, then I would absolutely recommend that you submit them to, and then we can bring them next week. But I will say
last
at
week
this
it was
point, with
presented.
this many,
It's not
with
what's
this,
happening, Michelle or Jennifer.
it's
Last week it was
Jennifer.
presented that Bill Penniman gave you guys some comments, and it was like, well, we discussed it and we decided not to do it.
Then
Oh,
please
oh,
speak up and say we disagree with your changes, because that's the only way we're
That's
going
not the
to
way it was
know.
presented. We just, you didn't, I just
It's
disagree that open.
it's the
the
same
chair,
with every chapter we've been through,
well,
guys.
if we are voting on the changes, then the changes within the working group, were and we were very clear last week with what was accepted by folks that provided edits to the working group, what those edits were, whether they were accepted, whether the working group understood the intent of that edit and changed the language that it fit more with the keeping of the comprehensive plan and the land use chapter, or the ones that were rejected and why they were rejected. So I think that there is a misunderstanding in terms of what this working group
Right,
is.
but Lynn, I mean, take for example, I think I raised last week the question of the numbers in the charts. And to my knowledge, it was the first time I understood that the numbers in the charts represent the total number of people inclusive of bonus units associated with the provision of workforce and affordable housing, which I don't know how you calculate that without knowing how many units are coming into how many market units are coming in and where you fall on whatever the workforce and affordable housing chart shows, right? Like we haven't even finished David's portion on affordable housing, and we're assuming that the 10,000 units is inclusive of the program that he's not yet completed yet, or not yet completed. And I guess that's the rub that I'm trying to understand is like, how, fine, I can comment on changing a that to a which or a which to a that, but the sort of thematic notion of like, if we want to solve a housing problem, and that's our biggest objective in all of this, is to provide as much affordable housing or make housing more available to a broader section of the population, you don't do it by taking units and people out of the equation. You do it by putting more units into the equation and increasing the supply, not making the supply more finite. And it's that tension between the competing objectives of, we want Reston to be all inclusive, but we're going to limit the number of units to do so. Just, I don't know how we square that round peg. And so that's the challenge I have with commenting on the specific language is I don't know that I agree with the premise to begin with.
Well, I think that, you know, I don't know if Commissioner Carter is on the line, but I can tell you that we have been working very closely with staff to try and rationalize these numbers. And I think you heard earlier today that that we have been meeting with staff to try and accomplish that. And there is a finite amount of land in Reston.
Sure. That's why you go up.
Well, hold off on the numbers, Mark. We talked about this last time, John Carter. So hold off on the numbers. We don't have the workforce, we don't have the affordable housing done yet, so we don't know all of the factors, but we haven't rationalized this totally with staff. I think we're close, but
Yeah.
just wait for the numbers. I wouldn't, I mean, pay attention, but there could be changes to this coming, particularly in that 10,000 number that everybody keeps talking about.
But can I interject?
Right there.
I think we've been presenting, this is numbers that have been up there for a long time, Mark. You know, John has talked about these numbers, we've gone through them. So this is not the first time these have been here.
Sure.
And in fact, we started off this task force by wanting to get those numbers at the beginning. I was pressing heavily last July to get staff numbers. John Mooney and Larry were working on the numbers along with John Carter. So these are not anything new we've been talking about. This has been talked about maybe since the first task force meeting, and we've been seeking them, and we've been working on this all along, and they've been presented like this for a long time. So that's why you're hearing this reaction. To me, it wasn't last week, it was many times ago. And as John just said, they are, you know, being worked on and coordinated with staff.
There's still more work to do on these numbers. So I wouldn't
Right.
focus on these quite yet.
Yeah, and that's why this is still a draft.
This is Bill. If I could just comment. I mean, I think what Mark is driving at is little wording here and there decided by the group in good faith, and they've accepted some of my suggestions, not others. That's fine. But what we haven't had, we had something back in July. Some of us gave comments on that. We got something in October. We've given more comments on that. But what we haven't had, and the numbers, the problem with the numbers is they are maximums and they preclude bonuses. I've been told there will be no bonuses that could move anything above that. Not for WDUs, ADUs, not for a variety of other public goals, which you can only achieve by, as Mark said, allowing more development to bring in the people in ways that are consistent with county policies and in ways that are consistent with our long-term interest, not near-term, but our long-term interest in the shape of Reston and the counties addressing sprawl, climate, and a variety of other things. But you may have great debates in your meetings, but we haven't had full discussions of some of those issues here. And that was what I attempted to do with my summary of principal comments. And I also sent you editorial changes, but at some point we need the bigger discussion. That's all. And I do not dispute, you know, that you're working in good faith to try and review everybody's comments and so forth. It's just, we're not party to those discussions at this point. But thank you.
Keep in mind, these numbers do reflect the WDU bonuses that have occurred, particularly in the approved dwelling unit column. But I think what would be helpful at this point would be, if there are questions, these numbers are intended to be built up land bay by land bay. So if there's concerns about the way to build this is from each land bay. So if you want to add or subtract commercial square footage or residential, do it land bay by land bay. You won't get very far with the overall numbers because it's not easy to understand where they would go. If you want to increase the abstract numbers, if you're not doing it land by land bay, nobody knows what to do with those numbers, whether you're adding or subtracting.
But on the other hand, John, the way it was done in the past and can easily be done in the future is call these estimates and then let people, developers come in and propose additional density of WDUs and ADUs, additional donations of goods or services or land or something to the, or money to the county to support other things and award that with additional bonus density, which is not in here. It would be on top, presumably, but that's just the way the county has always worked. It's not a planning problem because the school board and everybody else in the county is used to doing that. Because as you said last time, the idea of a fixed maximum is unusual and not something we normally see in the county. So it's something they can deal with. And I think from the standpoint of addressing climate sprawl in many and supporting the retail and commercial investments we're trying to attract, you need the people there too. And anyway, so that's what.
Moira has a comment, her hand up, Lynn.
Let me finish. Hold on. Just so again, you can call them estimates, but build them up land bay by land bay. Who gets what is what the comp plan is about. So are you adding or subtracting from these various categories? Are you adding or subtracting from village centers, convenience centers, from the neighborhoods? Where are the additional units being subtracted from, or are they added to? Because these numbers are generated land by land bay. They aren't abstractions. Yes, the precision is always in question. How precise, even though they look very precise, they're not precise. But build it up land bay by land bay, treating them as large numbers, as abstractions. You don't know where those numbers are coming from. And where they're coming from is very important because that's how the comp plan is built. Whether you're at the environmental chapter or whether you're at the land use chapter or the transportation chapter, it needs to be built land bay by land bay. That's what these numbers are, rather than abstractions of what you sort of feel like what the numbers should be. So please, if I could implore everybody, if you want changes, do it land bay by land bay. And we spent a lot of time making it clear what each land bay is recommended for. So build it that way rather than an abstract number. Yes, they are estimates. They aren't caps. They give you a sense of how big this is going to be, but it's built up land bay by land bay, not from it's building it from the bottom up instead of the top down.
Right. Thank you, John.
And I know that's not the normal way of doing this. I know it's not. But.
Lynn, I wanted to check, do you have some more presentation to do?
Well, I did want to finish going through the neighborhoods and then the single family and multifamily changes that we made to that content. But since we're on this discussion, I think Tammy said that Moira had her hand up and I'm not able to see. Thank you for.
That was
okay?
long. That was not my hand up. That was leftover. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Moira.
All right, Lynn, why don't you go through?
Let
We've got
me finish.
17, finish that. But then if we could, let's have a little bit more Q&A, and I'm perfectly comfortable with encouraging people to provide comments in writing, but I did promise last week that we would do Q&A on land use. So after you finish, Lynn, let's go ahead
Okay.
and take more verbal comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. The changes that were made to the recommendations for single family, and this is for attached and detached. This is pretty much the same text, although perhaps shortened or amended. So as I mentioned, I'm encouraging you all. You've had this content for 2 weeks now, and please review. Let us know what your edits are. Let us know what your comments are, and let us review as the working group so that we can bring the final draft back to the task force. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do that next week or the week after. Recommendations for single family, again, some of the additions would be around maintaining the existing amount of natural areas. This is shortened from what was there before. Maintaining the existing mature tree canopy. Again, that is something that was in the previous. Number 6, density must be earned. This is a new one based on the new earned density model that is currently being built. The same thing for recommendations for multifamily. We recognize that these developments are an integral part of the community. They are planned to retain existing densities and unit types. And this plan does not propose nor recommend significant modification of any multifamily area. Again, we're saying that the proposal must be consistent. This is similar language. The architecture and massing of the development should feature context-sensitive design that fits into the natural and architectural character. And again, maintaining at a minimum the existing amount of natural areas, maintaining the existing mature tree canopy, and finally, all density will be earned. So now we can open it up to a Q&A.
Say, Lynn, just one point
Yeah.
of clarification, that last section.
Yeah.
You know, those are all in red and underlined, and I don't really think those are new except for number 6, I think. I believe those all come from the previous comp plan, but I'm not sure.
Right, they were shortened. I think there was
I see.
more text associated. We just kind of condensed it, but the meaning is the same. Thank you, John. Yes.
Lynn, this is David Gill. Just for the clarity of the task force, these last 2 recommendations do not apply to the corridor, correct?
I'm sorry, David.
Sorry, my microphone here. These last 2 recommendations do not apply to the corridor?
No, these are for Reston neighborhoods.
That was just for edification of the task force, just to make that clear.
Right. Yeah, residential neighborhoods. Yeah, so you can see the only areas that abut the corridor are number in this map is number 4, which is now is the golf courses. So the remainder of those neighborhoods are outside of that area. I think Charter Oak is probably somewhere in here. Actually, it would be right there. If you can see my cursor. Any other questions?
Yes.
Hi, Jan.
Question. Hi there. I particularly like the will remain as golf courses. I think it's important to leave that in. As far as a cap, I think that, I know that some people in the task force are pro-development, but I think it can get out of hand as far as the infrastructure and Reston is concerned, the neighborhood feel of Reston. And so I think that we are different and we should have caps. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think you've done a fabulous job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan. I'm not able to see if there are any hands up. I don't know, Jose, are you able to see any hands up?
Not at the moment. I saw Jan just put her hand down.
Okay, thank you, Jose. Any other questions? Comments? Criticisms,
Jan-
applause?
Jan,
David
this
has
is-
a hand. Oh,
I'm sorry, Lynn, this
Okay.
is David Vanel.
Yes.
Would you
Hi,
please,
David.
would you please for us explain earned density?
Well, I can explain that it is a work in progress right now, but at a very high level. And I'm sure folks on the working group are going to correct me if I'm wrong, but at a very high level, earned density is a concept whereby applications are reviewed, they're submitted and reviewed to get into a baseline. So the baseline would be the minimum. So if it's expressed in dwelling units, for example, if an application comes through that is looking to develop in a medium area, then those dwelling units are expressed, I think, in the range is 13 to 20. Where there are no dwelling units expressed, then it would be 50% of the density would be the baseline. So applicants would need to meet certain criteria in order to qualify to get that first level, the minimum or the baseline density, and would have to, oh, thank you, Jennifer. I don't know if you all can see Jennifer's chat, but it's a way of qualifying for the baseline density and then earning your way up to higher levels of density, whether it's through affordable housing or transportation, or we don't know what those are. This is still a recipe that is being created. So
And
earned
what are-
density
and
does
what are
not
those-
impact.
And what are those criteria? You mentioned criteria. What are those criteria?
Well, the planning principles would be
They haven't
the
been
planning principles. It's the criteria that is used today, actually, by staff to review and approve applications.
But Lynn, the criteria for the earned density has really not been.
Oh, you're right. For earned density has
So,
not.
Sorry to be so mysterious, but it is unknown.
Well, it's a work in progress.
Where to
Yeah.
start is we're easing into that, but what the criteria are, we haven't gotten there yet. And yes, this will be a lot of fun-filled facts when we get to that point. Of course it will be.
Yeah, it will be. But yeah, it does not, earned density should not be confused with bonus density that is applicable to affordable and workforce housing. So they're two different things.
So does earned density and bonus density exist at the same time in the
Yes.
plan?
Well, bonus density is the affordable and workforce units that are available. And I don't believe that the comprehensive plan considers those, but they are available. Is that correct, John?
They're separate concepts. So let's take the
Right.
affordable housing, which is the only one that we're close to so far, is there's a bonus density assigned with the percentage of ADUs or WDUs that you provide. That's fixed or will be negotiated out. So that's bonus density. Earn density would be in addition to that, I suppose, but they're separate concepts. We shouldn't confuse the two.
No.
Lynn, I see. Oh, John Mooney put his hand down. Oh, sorry. Sorry, John.
Nope.
If I may put it
And
back
I'm
up.
sorry, I'm sorry, David, that we don't have more answers for you on earned density and other folks on the call, but
Yes.
that really is going to be a separate chapter. All we did in this draft of the land use chapter was to really introduce it as a concept. But as I said, and John said, it is still being built out. We're still defining what the parameters are. And there are other areas that have used this concept successfully. So we, of course, want to employ best practices as well. So.
Okay,
And
I
I'll just
just-
say Jennifer Juszczyk just sent an email out or a chat out that talks about that issue. It's a separate thing, as Lynn is alluding to there.
I'm sorry, Gary, what?
It's separate from, what we're going to end up here for the land use chapter, as you just
Right.
pointed out, and Jennifer just sent out in a chat.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, this is Bill, just a general observation. It appears that, well, first place, I don't think it's fair to try to ask people to vote on land use before they've seen this, the key to understanding what it means, which seems to be the earned density concept. Everything in the chapter seems to be tied to that, and so the two need to be viewed together. But the general tendency, and this is reflected in my comments, is that almost all the moves so far have been to suppress potential development in the TSAs. That I was told that you've eliminated any bonus density, although now perhaps there is some somewhere. You've eliminated minimums in several areas, so you could end up with townhouses where there really ought to be tall buildings with lots of people, including low-income people. You've got a whole slew of things that undermine the potential for transit-oriented development of this sort, and development of residential near commercial, which the county it wants, and that we should want. People spend a lot of money to get these areas, and so that's a comment, and those need to be addressed.
I don't share that observation, Bill. I'm sorry, but development is expected in the transit corridor, in the TSAs.
But if you combine the yet to be seen earned density concept, the elimination of bonus potential, the incentives for
Nobody said bonuses were going to be eliminated.
You told me that. If that's not right, that's great.
That's not, no. Bonus density is achieved through provision of affordable and workforce housing.
There should be other ways too, but that's new, because previously I was told that all bonus densities had been eliminated. Okay, in any event, I think until we see the meaning of earned density, it's going to be very difficult to assess what this plan actually has in mind. So that's And
I want to be,
remember too, let me just add one other thing. If we underdevelop now, that harm will last decades beyond our passing away. It'll be a barrier to sensible transit-oriented development, sensible density for a century, because that's how long the buildings will last. So we need to get it right and leave open the door to more, not less. You know, it's true from a climate standpoint, it's true from a sensible planning and keeping down your taxes standpoint too. Okay, enough for now. But these big issues need to be addressed by the group. Thank you.
so now let's be clear that nobody is taking away any density that's been approved. Nobody is taking away any density that was proposed, at least in the transit corridor in the last plan. In fact, we're a little higher than the last time, minor points. So not so far. The proof, I mean, the task force needs to be shown that that's the case. And I think if it's not, we'll probably make corrections. Now, in terms of the earned density, it's for the first time it's introduced in the land use chapter, but it pertains just as much to the environmental chapter or the transportation chapter or the open space chapter. Earned density runs across the whole plan. It's not just the land use chapter. Maybe the land use chapter does lay out recommendations for density for each land bay. But to get that density, it runs across all of the chapters. So I guess when we finally develop the criteria, it will run across several of the chapters. So it lands on the land use, but it has tentacles throughout the comp plan. And I understand the concern about, okay, now let's get down to what is it about? But nobody's taking density away from any approved project, or there are very few projects left in the transit corridor. Nobody's taking density away from those projects, or the ability to get affordable housing at a whole variety of densities, depending on what the affordable housing chapter recommends.
Bill, I think that you are frustrated, but keep in mind, the plans that have come forward are from the owners of the parcels, and nothing this committee has done. What we have done is we have reorganized, renamed, and put into districts the parcels, where before you didn't quite know, hey, what this plan should make the use of the plan so much easier for the staff primarily. They work with this, they depend on it. The staff and the developers or the owners. That's what this is written to try to clarify. You're frustrated because we have townhouses going in where you would prefer to have high rises. That's not the fault of this committee or anything else. That's the responsibility of the people who put those applications in. What applications are coming forward? Kinds of buildings that are cheap to build. Podium over and stick built over podium. That's not our responsibility. We can't make somebody build something. The market has been overbuilt or over approved for a certain amount of housing, the demographic of which is limited. So the places that have been built are standing empty. So you're not going to get more of that. This is a 5-year plan attempting to reorganize unnamed parcel segments or districts or whatever you want to call it very carefully as a better tool for staff and developers, so they can go and they can say, I'm in X district or sub-district or whatever it is, I'm a TOD or I'm not a TOD, I have a 50-50 ratio I have to accommodate, or a 75-25, or I have no ratio. It's to facilitate the use of the comp plan. the amount of work that's gone into this is stunning. 2 hours a week, baloney. Way more than that. Way more than that. And we've been doing it every single week. Sometimes we meet
Yep.
2 or 3 times a week, depending on what the issues are. Lastly, are you thrilled with anything that's been developed so far?
Yes.
I mean, we have compared to everything that's been built, there are a few things that are stars, but they all should be stars. This is Reston. So when
Right.
we're working through our chapters, you and I work shoulder to shoulder on environment. We're trying to do the best we can. Everybody's working their guts off. God help John Mooney, who's been working on transportation. Hopefully we'll cover that next time. But everybody's been working really hard, and I think we should be proud of where we are rather than worrying about, oh, we're not going to get this huge amount of, the cup is full. You can't keep pouring water in that. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the money for the infrastructure. We are going to get it maybe in a decade or 2 or 3. There are going to be plans in the interim that can handle this kind of thing. In the meantime, our climate is going berserk. So we've got to get our hands on this. We've got to get our arms around it. We've got to try to be a model of a biophilic community that the county can say, this is working. People want to be here. Prime developers want to be here. We're not forcing them. If they don't like some of these parameters, they're perfectly able to go to Prince William or Stafford or Maryland or wherever if they think they can get a better deal. But Reston is unique, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to have it overburdened and busting at the seams. So I'll stop there. But that's I know you're disappointed. I think we're all disappointed, and that's why we're providing our time for 20 months working our guts out on this. Thank you.
Tammy, thank you for your comments, but I want to say I think the discussion tonight actually has been very helpful. Bill, thank you for flagging a couple of issues there, and David for pointing to the importance of the density criteria that don't exist yet. And that needs to be a priority in order to understand how the land use chapter will actually be read and implemented. So this is, I think, very helpful to get those issues out on the table. Lynn, do you have anything else this evening?
Yeah, I just want to share at a very high level. I just want folks to know that the group that is working on this. We appreciate, Walter, you giving the citizens an opportunity to have a voice and a big voice in this process. And from the citizens' perspective, we just want to make sure that the language in this plan lets it be known that Reston is different and that we are sticking to the planning principles that made Reston unique when it was formed back in the 60s. And, the attempts to monetize every square inch of remaining open space is not right. And, we just think that this language in the plan is going to ensure that the language in the plan is something that everyone can work with. Thank you.
All right, Lynn, thank you. And I do really appreciate all the work that everyone's putting in on this. We're pretty far along into the process, but there are obviously some pieces that still need to come together, some things that still need to be written and even thought through, if not conceived. So, so we are getting there, and I would just encourage everybody to continue to listen to each other, to work through these issues, and let's keep going. Let's keep going. We have gotten a long way. Ooh, I saw another hand from Lynn. That was a real hand.
Yes, I just noticed a chat that popped up, and Mark Malcolm had asked if attendees are being given an opportunity to ask questions. And as I said, I'm not able to really navigate while I'm sharing my screen. So
Mark, thank you for
Mark
flagging
Malcolm,
that.
for
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Are there
and
folks that are attendees that had questions?
I don't see any hands up there. Jose, have you seen any hands amongst the attendees?
I don't, but if Mark Malcolm can identify them, I can unmute them. Mark?
I don't have any identified at this point. However, making sure that that is based on what you've said before, Supervisor.
Thank you,
I'll
Mark.
make sure that happens.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And I appreciate the reminder, because unlike us sitting around in a room with people around a table and then people in the audience, it's not always as easy to see somebody's hand when they're an attendee in Cisco WebEx, even though it's good software. All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Lynn, very much. Does anyone have any last questions or comments before we break for the evening? And also thank John Mooney for being patient with the
Thank you,
transportation
John.
section. Any comments or questions? Tammy, I see your hand up.
Thank you. What we have transportation next time, and what else?
Good question, Tammy. That's actually on our agenda to try to identify those. So we have transportation coming up. I believe, well, we may have land use again, Lynn, next week. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have that. Jose, what else do we have still sitting out there? Anything else that's close that might come to the task force for initial approval?
I don't have my list in front of me. I'm sorry, Supervisor.
I'm
But if
sorry,
Tammy
I
has a
didn't mean to put you
suggestion,
on the spot.
we can plan on that.
Walter
Carrie,
and Jose, this is
have we voted on yours yet, Carrie?
Yeah,
That
I
was
think we
an
have
official
Gary.
vote? Okay. We still have Parks and Recs, and I have 5 changes to make in that one. So it's
good,
from the
Jennifer.
subgroup, and Jose's been after me. I just have been busy with other chapters. So if no one's going to volunteer, I can volunteer for next Monday, right? That's my
Oh, it's
meeting.
beautiful, Jennifer. Thank you.
Walter,
And
this is
David, did I
Linnell.
hear you?
Yeah. I'm away from town, so I've got a kind of limited access to stuff. I'm going to try to get housing turned in. If I can't by the end of this week, then I'm going to have to postpone it until the following Tuesday. I will do my best to try to make some changes and get it so we can talk about it next week.
Very good. Thank you very much, David. Tammy, I see your hand again.
Bill Penniman, we're ready for, we haven't voted on environment yet, have we?
I thought
Yes,
we did that at
yes,
the
we did.
September
It got
meeting.
sent to the staff, so we're waiting to hear back from the staff, but it's already been
So
voted on.
we're done. Okay.
Well, until the staff comes back and says anything other than congratulations.
Well, yeah, that means, I mean, as
Which
far
I'm
as-
expecting them to do.
Okay. Just trying to figure out where we are in our chapters.
There's also health. Health is another one.
Community health.
Yes, yes. I don't know if we voted on that or not, but that's one of the sections.
Yeah, Michelle, I know you're working on that one.
I would say if we can do transportation and Parks and Rec, we'll
That'd be a big thing.
okay. You know, seeing
Yeah.
as we don't whiz through these as fast as we thought, if we can get those done, we'll be in fabulous shape.
I agree, Tammy. I think let's focus on those two. And if anyone else has other chapters that might be ready to come, and then we'll talk to Jose. Let Jose know. But yeah, if we can do well, frankly, if we can get through 1 to 2 of these per meeting, we're in pretty good shape, Tammy. I think that's pretty ambitious, but let's try it. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, any other questions or comments before we wrap up? Okay, well, thanks, everybody. The season's changed in my house. I don't know about anybody else, but I went from the basement at the beginning of the meeting to the loft because I got really cold. So I hope we're going through another change of seasons. Hopefully, I'll just be in the loft through the end of the task force, all right?
I just got
And we-
back from New Orleans Saturday night and it went from, I mean, I came back and all the leaves are changing. So, it's amazing.
Well,
Yep.
well, thank you, Lynn. Welcome back. And I still feel bad about your 30th wedding anniversary in a couple of weeks, but
Hey, my
anyway,
husband understands.
Congratulations to you and John.
Worry about it if you're still here for 31st.
All right.
Just
Bill,
to
did you have something?
No, I was just going to say thanks to everybody, including Lynn and Tammy and the people who may have been offended by things I said. I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Bill. You're appreciated too. So, all right, let's wrap it up. It's 9:15. Everyone, I
Thank
hope
you.
can get the rest of their evening, and if you're into baseball, maybe even watch a little of the World Series. So, all right.
Woo.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you, Jose.